There are two ways to create a video game. The first is through code, like GML, C#, or whatever language your engine uses. This approach gives you total flexibility and power over your game, how it runs, but it also makes it more complex, it can make it more difficult to read, and introduces an unlimited source of potential bugs and typos. The second method is through visual scripting or drag and drop. This way doesn't require coding, instead you drag blocks of logic to form connections. It's visually appealing, requires no prior knowledge, and it is much more accessible. D&D isn't free from its own issues, however, as it isn't as powerful, there aren't as many tutorials and teachers using it, and it can still produce its own quirks. Each of these is a different framework for creating games. Is one better than the other? Should you avoid one of them like the plague? Are you a real developer if you use D&D over code? Let's take a deep dive and compare these two approaches to game development, specifically within GameMaker Studio, and answer these questions. Now, I want to be upfront and give you a little background about me so you know where I'm coming from in this video. I have a background in programming and even a computer science degree. I attended several different colleges for computer science. Why I did that is a story for another video, and have been coding games for over half a decade. I started with programming a simple text adventure in Java, and that's what got me hooked on game dev. The total freedom and power of creating your own game, even something as simple as a text adventure, was invigorating and made me want more. That was back in 2015, and I can still remember the moment when I ran that little game and the text came to life, and I was able to type in, "walk to the bar," or "move south," and my game then told me what was happening in that area. It was amazing. My next big experience in game dev was with a small group doing a game jam using Unreal Engine. I was very inexperienced with UE and didn't know how to code in it at all. There was another, much more experienced programmer, but he thought we should use the visual scripting so that I could actually assist. And so we did. We did a practice game jam where we failed to complete the game, but I learned an awful lot about artists, communication, and working under stress. This jam was a 48-hour one where you were given a theme and then had to create everything from scratch. Our first practice jam, we tried to create a tower defense-like game, but just didn't know enough to be helpful, and so I wasn't really doing anything, and the other programmer had to do it all, and it just never got completed. Then we did the real game jam, and even though it took us right up until the last moment, we got our game submitted and finished. I felt a lot more comfortable and capable the second time around using their visual scripting engine, and it was easy for me to pick up after just a few days of experimentation. The accessibility of it was incredible, and I remember loving it and enjoying the game jam even with the stress and arguments our team had, which was quite a few. The other programmer became my mentor for a while, and he taught me more of UE and programming in general, which I am still grateful for to this day. Shout out to Jimmy. From there, I jumped around to different engines and experimented with game dev. It wasn't for a while until I settled on GameMaker Studio and decided to start working on my own games. My channel was born out of what I was learning while developing my own game, and I wanted to share that knowledge. I used GML from the beginning of my time with GameMaker, as I had a lot more experience with coding by then because of all my computer science classes. I knew GameMaker had D&D, I had experimented with it, but found it wasn't really for me. I knew how to code and debug, so I only focused on GML both personally and on my channel. So with my history out of the way, let's talk about GML compared to D&D. They're both systems or frameworks that allow you to create a game. They both work quite well. D&D is more accessible because it doesn't require coding, but GML is also simpler than most other languages and is more forgiving of common coding mistakes, like forgetting a semicolon or using only one equal when you meant to use two. D&D is great for newcomers and those who don't want to get bogged down in code. GML is easy to pick up no matter which language you've used in the past because it's kind of a hybrid language, so you don't need to know a specific other language to be able to start using GML. So then, is one better than the other? I suppose the best answer I can give is yes and no. Asking if something is better than another is only useful when it comes to reviewing products or services that are trying to do the same thing. Is a smartphone from this year better than last year? Well, Probably because it's going to have the newest hardware, which makes it faster and objectively better. But is an apple better than an orange? To you it might be, but not to someone else. The better question to ask, see what I did there? The better question to ask is which framework is better for my needs. If you're brand new to game development and coding intimidates you, then D&D is going to fit you much better than GML and all the learning that would be required to use it. If you've used visual scripting in another engine and want to prototype your game in GameMaker, then D&D is probably your best route, as it's something you're already familiar with. Are you teaching a friend to make games for the first time? D&D might be the best place to start, as it's approachable and easy to pick up for newbies. On the other side of that, if you're an experienced programmer who's picking up GameMaker for the first time, then GML is going to fit your needs best. It will be familiar, and you'll immediately know how to get started and understand how to read the manual, discover all the features that GML has, and use them to the full capacity. If you're someone more interested in learning programming than game development, but you want to learn by making games, then GML is your best bet. Everyone has different needs and goals, which changes which option is better for them. From a purely objective viewpoint, yes, GML is better in that it's more powerful, flexible, and easier to find assistance from others with. But if the idea of learning to code will keep you away from making games and joining the community, then it's the worst option for you. Don't blindly follow what everyone says. Figure out what you want to accomplish, take the best path, and use the best framework suited for that. And what about the belief that D&D isn't a real framework, and that those who use D&D aren't game developers? Maybe you've heard that, or seen that, or read that somewhere. Do you need to know how to code to be a game developer? Is GML required to launch a game and have it be a success? Absolutely not. You can make a game using D&D and launch it. That game's quality isn't immediately worse for being in D&D. It's just the development framework is a little different, but the game can still be wonderful. At the end of the day, D&D gets converted into GML, so that game is going to run the exact same. It's all about who's making it and how they made it. Once you start putting limits on what requires someone to be a game dev, the community becomes exclusive instead of welcoming. Requiring someone to know how to code before they're welcome to a forum is harmful for everyone involved. I have never sold a game of mine, never completed a project that I'm proud enough to show off to my friends and family and put it on Steam. I get caught up in making new projects and new games and leave ones by the wayside. Maybe you're like me in that regard. Am I a game developer? Do you have to sell a game that sells 1,000 copies or 10,000 or 1,000,000 copies before you're official? That bar can keep moving up, and it will be painful to both you and those around you when you think that you're not a game developer because you haven't achieved X or Y or Z. Not everyone is immediately a game developer. I think that's obvious. But I believe that if you want to make games and you start that process, whether through pen and paper, D&D, GML, or some other alien language, you become a game developer in that process. The framework you use, the games you've finished or sold, none of that matters in determining if you're a game developer. And if anyone tells you differently, then get out of there and come join my community where you'll be welcome. In the end, D&D is a tool just like GML. Use the one that works best for the job at hand, and don't worry about what anyone else is yelling at you to use a better tool, because it's your project, not theirs. You know what you need to be doing, so do that, and do it to the best of your ability. If you have any thoughts or stories you'd like to share, I would love to hear them in the comments down below. You can leave a comment or find me on Twitter and let me know what you think. It would mean a lot to me if you left a like on the video. It lets me know you enjoy this and that I should keep making content like it. And as always, keep making, keep learning, and I'll talk to you later. A huge thank you to all of the awesome people who support me over on Patreon. Their names are on the screen now, and every dollar pledged helps me create more awesome content. You can support me for as little as $1 a month and get access to exclusive perks like my Discord server, your name in the credits, early access to my YouTube videos and courses, and more. Check it out at patreon.com/letslearnthistogether.com or find the link in the description below and become a patron today.